And welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. Always a pleasure to welcome Tammy Mackey Schrum from Zoar Historical Village. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Tammy, I have to start with this. We're in a very weird time, and you're in the tourism industry. So tell me, how are you doing things right now?
It has been a difficult period for us. We've had to completely revamp our operational model, how we do tours, how we staff people, what our programs look like, what our educational programs look like. And we've really had to step back. We do a lot of large-scale events, like our antique show, and those, unfortunately, we have not been able to host this year, at least not in a safe manner. Mm-hmm. And we also are missing out on a lot of the educational opportunities, like our speaker series we have not been able to have, and we haven't been able to welcome any school children this year. So we're missing out on things like that. But we have taken what we can do and adapted it into different specialty tours and really kind of tried to come up with creative ways to raise additional funds and to hold some of the programs that we normally do, but in a safe manner.
I want to kind of take each of those apart a little bit. Let's start with the specialty tours, because that's a new thing, isn't it?
It is a new thing. We just started those, and a lot of the topics that are involved in the specialty tours are just, topics that you kind of touch on in the general history, but it is an opportunity to take that topic and go to a larger level. So if you've ever been to Zoar and ever really kind of wanted to know more about children in Zoar and what it was like for their schooling and for their everyday lives, we have a back-to-school tour. If you're into themes that are more artistic in nature, we have a tour that is all about artwork that was done in Zoar and of Zoar. We have one that's called Till the Cows Come Home that we wrote about the dairy industry. And then we have one that focuses on the textile industry that we called From Sheep to Shawl. Yeah. So we had a little fun with it. And like I said, it's really just kind of topics that we see guests ask about that they want to know more. And this is the opportunity that you can learn more.
I think this coronavirus has had to make us get really creative. And we've started doing some things, and I think in many, many ways doing some things better. So is this one of those things you'll continue? Because those all sound really interesting, really fun.
Yeah. Yes, and we will definitely continue doing the specialty tours. And the tour guides have just loved these tours, and they love having a different aspect of Zoar that they get to tell. And I have a whole new list of specialty tours that they would like to see us write. So I think this will keep continuing to evolve in the future, and I think we'll have a lot of other specialty tours in the future.
What's it look like? Is everyone masked and you keep everybody to 10 or fewer, groups of 10 or fewer? Or how do these look in practice?
Yeah, so we have guided tours at certain times during the day. We limit each tour time and each tour guide's tour to 10 people, and then our tour guide wears a mask or a shield, and then all of the guests also have to wear a mask while we're out and about on the tours. We've even brought out the golf cart again, so if somebody has any mobility issues, we do have golf cart tours that we can offer, but everyone does wear the mask. Bakery is still open, and we have plexiglass up in the bakery. It's out, service is out the window now, which is different from what we're used to in modern times, but service out the window is exactly what the separatists did. So in a way, the bakery is getting back to its historical roots. So some of the adaptions have, I think, worked out, and we might, keep in the future. And then if we do have like a historic specialty tour, or like we have a history trail event coming up where we're going to have characters throughout town, the way that we structure those is every 15 minutes we have a group of 10 that leaves, and they have a set route to go through so that we spread everybody out through the entire village, and we keep that distancing in place.
Do you find it difficult to get people to be willing to come out in public and participate in these things, or are people just so eager to go anywhere and do something fun that you're not having any trouble attracting guests?
I think people are very eager to get out and do something and get out of the house, especially in a place like Zoar, just because it is so open. There's, a lot of architecture, a lot of stuff to see outside, and a lot of our tours have started outside where you get the history and the explanation, and then you briefly walk through the buildings. So we're trying to keep everything outdoors as much as possible. And we do offer, and a couple people have taken advantage of this, that we have that 10 o'clock hour. So if you're leery of going out in the public, you can come at 10 o'clock, or after you book your tour, if you go ahead and give us a call, we can take your tour time and just completely block it out so it's just you and your family on the tour if you're not comfortable being around other groups.
That's so accommodating. That's so nice of you. A lot of folks that I'm talking to are using technology more and more. I'm wondering if there's any way that Zoar would, which really sounds weird because you're talking about, hundreds of years ago, it wouldn't be authentic at all. But as far as like perhaps classroom Zoom events or something like that, have you attempted anything or thinking about anything like that?
We've attempted a few. Like I said, we're not really used to doing that, so that was somewhere where we had to really kind of get ourselves up to the level that it needed to be. We did do a virtual tour. We went around to the different buildings, and just like if you were here on a normal day for a tour, and we did that before we were permitted to open, so you could see what Zoar was like. And then we took our history camp, and we put it all online, and the kids for camp could come and pick up a packet of all of their activities. And then we had videos on Facebook and on YouTube that they could watch, and each video had an activity with it, and they could kind of watch as they went along. So instead of being here in person, they could use some stuff online. We've done a couple hotel tours that we did post online, and we did a live ghost hunt in the hotel for one of our virtual tours as well. So we have kind of ventured into that, and we're trying to create a packet for teachers that they can zoom in or, show some of these videos in their classroom. If they can't visit Zoar, we can visit them at least virtually.
Can you imagine those original founders seeing 2020, what was going on, and how you're doing that?
Yeah, in certain ways, I think they might have been right there with us. They evolved for the tourists quite a bit. They were always kind of looking out for the tourists, and they went through a cholera epidemic, so I think they would understand what we're going through.
They were separatists, so they would get the isolation part as well.
Yes, yeah.
You mentioned funding has had to be different. What kinds of things are you doing? Can we participate? How can we help you keep things going there?
We're open for just, donations at any time. And then, currently we are having a fall bulb fundraiser. So if you're looking for bulbs to plant now to go, to have their blossoms in the springtime, you can buy your bulbs through us. And we have a number of different ways to do that. And we've also kind of put our creative hats back on and come up with some different programs that we can offer for the fall time, kind of expanding on our ghost tours and adding a couple different tours that we can do. So I think really to support us, if you just keep checking out our Facebook, keep coming to the events. We have been making sure that they're all done in a safe manner. You can join as a member, and we are honoring the memberships next year as well. Our Zoar store is open, the Zoar Bakery. So there's a number of different ways that people can support us.
So a lot of things are still going strong. They're just going differently. How do you suggest people find out? Do they go to your website? Do they give you a call, see what's open when? Talk to somebody in person as far as making reservations for whatever you'd like to do? What's the best way?
Kind of all of the above. But I think for the most up-to-date information, if we had to close, for some reason unexpectedly, we would have that on our Facebook page, or they could give us a call in the office at 330-874-3011. So I think I think Facebook for right now, just because everything keeps changing and adapting, that for the most current information, that would be the best place to look.
Yeah. Check out Facebook. And you go to Facebook, and then what do you search?
Historic Zor Village.
Historic Zor Village. Okay, now the reason I really called you is because you just did the most fun thing with A Taste of History. How did this all come about? And we're talking about a podcast, right, that people can watch still, correct?
It is. It's a TV show.
That's right. It's
series.
even better.
Yes.
It's a TV series.
Yes, and we had a speaker during our bicentennial year. He came out. He really enjoyed coming to Zor and being part of all of our bicentennial celebrations. And he was actually friends with Chef Walter Staub, who owns a restaurant in Philadelphia that is located in a historic Philadelphia tavern. So kind of imagine a tavern that Ben Franklin would have hung out in, and that's the Philadelphia Tavern.
Yes.
So Chef Staub does a historic television program. It's an Emmy award-winning program. And what he does is he goes to all of these different historic sites. He's been to Monticello. He's been, you name a historic site, he's been there. And what he does is he looks at what the historic cuisine would have been locally in that area, and he recreates a dish with some of the local experts. So they traveled to Zor, and they made like a Zor original recipe and a couple other German dishes, and their newest season is on Amazon Prime, so everyone can watch Zor kind of with their national spotlight for the moment.
Awesome. Just go to Amazon Prime and you can watch A Taste of History and the Zor episode. Is there a cookbook somewhere? How did you come up with these ancient recipes?
Well, the recipe for the Zor pretzel was actually passed down, and it's a descendant that makes the pretzels with him. And so that's been passed down through the generations from the actual original separatists of Zor. And some other ones were just kind of traditional German dishes that have kind of followed a lot of our ancestors over here to Ohio, since there's so many Germanic roots in Ohio. So that's where the recipes came for. But we picked dishes that we knew they would have had here in Zor.
What all did he make?
They made we call it goulash. There's another German name for it, but where it has like the pasta noodles and the kind of vegetables in it, and those and the pretzels were the big dishes that they made, and they actually cooked in the kitchen here in Zor using all historical methods.
Oh my goodness! All right, I need to know more. Tell me, okay, how do you cook in these really old buildings? Is it what kind of an oven? How do they do it?
You'd have to come down here to see or watch the show. But it's a big old black oven. It's probably 4 foot high. There's 4 different slots on there, and you pull up this thing. I don't know what you call it, the lid, where you want to place your pot over, and the pots all fit right into these little, what we would call now like a burner. And then the fire goes underneath, and depending on what you are making, if you want something heated up quickly or to go to boil, then you would put your pot directly over the fire. And if it's something that's more like a slow cook, like almost like what we would use a crock pot for today, then you put it on the burner away from the fire. And there's definitely a whole method to it. But we have some pretty experts here in Zor, and it's a neat method, and a lot of our volunteers really like explaining how the kitchen works, just because it is so different than what we do today.
It's so amazing to think that those people, because they didn't have a temperature, anything that they could go by, they'd have to just kind of tell how long's that fire been burning, and that would be the right heat, I guess. I can't wait to see the episode. I just cannot wait. Really amazing, first of all, that the cooks were able to cook back then the way they did, but also it's one thing when we're touring and we see a docent explains about the old kitchen. a whole other thing to see you turn stuff on and start
Yes,
using it. How long had it been since it was put to use?
Well, that one, when we have normal operations and we get to have the buildings open, we try to cook at least once a month in the kitchen.
Oh, how neat! I
And we
didn't
have like
realize that.
we have like a whole kitchen garden next to the kitchen that we can pull vegetables from to be able to cook. And then when we get to have our large programs and events, we almost always try to do a baking demonstration, so we get the bakery ovens going as well during our events. So.
Need to get down there for that, for sure. Okay, we are speaking with Tammy Mackey-Schrum from Historical Zoar Village. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community. Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas visiting with Tammy Mackey-Schrum from Zoar Village, and recently been featured on A Taste of History that you can find on Amazon Prime. Definitely watch that. This is just going to be amazing to see that television program and see our own Zoar Village featured and highlighted in it. Tammy, always, it's interesting to be behind the scenes. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened, the whole procedure of getting a program put on the air? What did you observe?
Well, one thing that sticks out in my mind is the day that they came for filming, because they filmed it just in 2 days. Which does seem, when you watch the episode, it's just amazing that the episode length equates to 2 working days, and how much actually ends up on the cutting floor. But I remember their first day of filming, they were late arriving because they had flown into Pittsburgh, and they were actually picking up their Emmys in Pittsburgh, so they were late arriving to Zoar. And there was a second, I was like, what world am I in right now?
That is a really good excuse, like maybe the best excuse ever. Oh, here, hold my Emmy while I do this.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So that was surreal. But
were you given like little tasks to do, or were you just kind of like a PA, kind of helping out with whatever their needs were?
Yeah. Just kind of helping out, and it was actually a very small crew, but it was a crew that had traveled with him, so they knew exactly what they were doing, where they needed to go. So really our job was just, kind of telling them where the outlet was so they could plug in their stage lights, or, the sun's going to shine through this window, so you'll get good lighting here. We had some of our volunteers were there that day, so we had scheduled them because they wanted to get some of that B-roll kind of behind-the-scenes footage to kind of have the shots in between when they're cooking. So we had some of our volunteers walking around the garden. And we also helped to coordinate, like finding Nancy with her Zoar recipe pretzels and getting some of our volunteers lined up so that they could actually cook with Chef Staub.
I just have to go back to something. You said the word outlet. You're telling me there are electrical outlets in Zoar buildings? My mind is blown.
Very few. That's why we had to help them find them.
Okay, no one knew where it was.
Yes, they're very few, but far between. But yeah,
and I hope hidden pretty well, right? For the rest of our eyes. Otherwise, that just ruins the whole thing. If you don't, we could just plug in. Can you charge my cell phone while you're at it? How did they find out about Zoar? Do you know? What was it that brought Zoar to their attention for this program?
It was one of our speakers that had come out. He had really enjoyed his time in Zoar, and he happened to be friends with the chef. And so he mentioned Zoar to him, and then that's when they decided they wanted to film one of the episodes here. And like I said, we're an amazing company because they've been to some of the really, just fantastic, presidential sites. We're a National Historic Landmark, but some of the other National Historic Landmarks, he cooked on a beach somewhere. It's just, wow. Yeah.
When did this take place? I'm guessing this was before coronavirus.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It was, it would have been in the fall of 2019.
That was great.
Just about a year, yes, yeah.
Great to get that in before everything hit, and then now you can just enjoy seeing it. Did you get any feedback from them about how cool Zoar is?
Oh, yes, they really enjoyed it, especially Chef Staub. He is from Germany, and he is from the area that the Separatists of Zoar we're in. So he really enjoyed it. Felt like coming home to him in a way. So he enjoyed his time in Zor.
So fun. Well, I know you're looking forward to when things settle down and go back to normal. Talk to me a little bit about your plans for the future.
We have some events lined up that are kind of history walks that we have lined up. We have our ghost tours. They're still going to go on. And then we have kind of a shell of Christmas in Zor, but we're going to really ramp up our Christmas tours. And then that's what we'll be doing Christmas in Zor weekend. We'll still have a lighting ceremony for Christmas in Zor, and we'll have Christmas tours going on, and then maybe some more decorations in town. So we do have a few things lined up, and like I said, we have that fall bulb sale that's currently going on, and we'll see what next year brings.
Yes, we're all hoping that it brings something better. But it sounds, you say a shell of Christmas in Zor, but it sounds like if you're still doing tours and there's still decorations, then there's every reason to still want to go, yes?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And there'll be still some shopping. So we're just, kind of missing out on like the wagon ride and different things like that. But we're still going to try to have that Christmas in Zor spirit. We're still going to, light everything up. There's going to be all kinds of Christmas decorations. You'll still get to hear, the story of Christmas here in Zor. So it's definitely different than in years past, but we still will have something to celebrate Christmas.
You still have some families, do you not, who are descendants of some of those original founders?
We do. Actually, the mayor of town is a descendant. And one of our volunteers, her name is Jan. She actually is 91 years old, and her father was a member of the Society of Separatists.
Wow.
So it's, quite amazing.
Well, and because I think of that as longer ago, but there is just one generation there. When was it that they came over, and when was it that they kind of dispersed and kind of joined the rest of the world?
Zor was founded in 1817. They became a communal settlement in 1819, and then they dispersed in 1898.
1898. So they didn't even make it to the 1900s.
Correct,
yeah. But it was an interesting way of life. We have a couple minutes for you to tell us a little bit of the history, because you're always so fascinating. What was a day like to someone who lived in Zor?
Well, they were, for a long time, about 81 years, a communal settlement. So that means everyone worked for the community, but then everything was provided for you. So like a typical day, if you had a set task or were an apprentice for a certain trade, then you would just go to the blacksmith shop, the bakery, wherever your trade was. If you did not have a specific trade, then every morning they would blow a horn, or later they would ring a bell, and then you would go to the assembly house and you would get your assignment for the day. Depending on when that was, most of the time it was going to be work out in the field. So then you would work pretty much through the day, dawn, to dusk, and then everyone went to church on Sundays. You had to have 2 church services that you attended. Other than the women could go to just one church service that day because they, knew you would have to have the meal preparations there at home. So you were excused from one. So that was kind of like, some of the very broad daily life, a short version of what life was like here in Zor.
What was it like for a child growing up there in Zor?
Depending on the time period, they had a short time period where children were actually put into dormitories and separated from the families. They did that because women outnumbered the men here in Zor when it was first founded. So to save women from childbearing and from having to tend to the children, because they needed the women for that everyday work, they had the children in the dormitories. When they did go to school, they learned in English and in German, and they learned their lessons that way. And then on Sunday, they would attend church, and they would attend a Sunday school as well.
So not that great. Not that great of childhood.
It was tough, but I mean, in that time era, it was tough for a lot of children.
My goodness. Well, and a lot of people point to communal living and say, see, they were socialists, but the big difference I hear is the emphasis on work. Everybody worked, and then everybody was given the same.
Right, and they were they lived communally, but the village was capitalistic. So they were all working for the greater good, but they also sold a lot of their goods and services up and down the canal and later up and down the railroad, and you name an industry, and they were in it, so that they could make money for everyone in the village. And they even were a very, very popular tourist attraction, and they knew it. So they would play up and have like wagon rides and canoe rides and that sort of thing to attract more of those, out-of-towners in so that they spend their money at the hotel.
Do we know about when that started? Were they always a tourist attraction, or was that later 1800s?
You had some travelers that started to venture here in right when the canal made it, more accessible, and that's when it kind of took off. And they had the Inn on the River, which is now the Canal Tavern of Zoar, and that very quickly grew to capacity. So in 1833, they built the Zoar Hotel so they could accommodate guests. So it was pretty early on that they, started taking advantage of those tourists.
They figured out, there's a buck to be made here. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So at what point did they decide this communal living isn't working for us, we need to go out and do something differently?
The leader, Joseph Beimiller, died in 1853, and no one took up the reins of being the spiritual leader. So they were just reading his sermons, and that was your church service, was just hearing these sermons that he had given long ago, nothing really new added to them. So that's when, memberships, were kind of starting to dwindle, where people were starting to question, is this what we really want? But it was really kind of towards that turn of the century, closer to dissolution, just because turn of the century is such, an era filled of change anyway, with everything on the horizon, all the technology. And then since it had grown into this booming tourist attraction, anyone that worked at the hotel could keep their tips. A lot of the girls got different ribbons and stuff that, it used to be, if there was a spool of ribbon, everybody got that same ribbon. But here they were getting, special trinkets on the side, and it's kind of like, wait a minute. Yeah. And then plus you have all these visitors coming in that are just, showing you how the outside world lives, which is so much different than the way you were living. Yeah. So, in that sense, they're kind of a lot like the Amish today.
Very similar.
Yes. So you have, these tourists coming in, you see the outside world. So whenever, because they could choose, they weren't forced into the settlement. You chose and you signed a contract to become a part of the, the communal living. Mm-hmm. So, if they decided they didn't want to because, the outside world looks a lot better, then that was kind of the end of it.
But isn't it interesting when a movement is really wrapped around an individual or a personality? Like he seemed to be the everything, right? He was a doctor as well, and the pastor, and kind of the mayor. He kind of was the guy, the head guy. With him gone, there was no one to pick up the torch or carry it on. It's interesting to watch, and I've seen it happen in other instances as well. Well, I knew our time would fly again. We want to tune in to A Taste of Zoar. I'm watching it tonight. It will be on Amazon Prime. And Tammy Mackey Schrum, once again, thank you so much for all you do in our community.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.